It's Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. Digital Trends Live is about to start. Here are some of the topics we're covering on today's episode of the show. Jack Dorsey's other company, Square, is under criticism currently regarding a practice of withholding up to 30% of funds from some small businesses. We'll give you their response. And Tom Jennings will be on the show. He's the producer of a Frontline documentary debuting today called Opioid, Inc., which details shocking allegations that led to the arrest of a pharmaceutical executive. And there were a lot of announcements at the WWDC keynote speech from Apple yesterday, and our own Andy Boxall will have details some of the iOS updates and also cover the OnePlus rumors. And every week we have our segment, Who's Got Game, where we partner with Fullscreen. And this week we'll have Andrew, a.k.a. Sigils from YouTube, to talk about his career in gaming and where it's headed next. All of that and more on today's episode of Digital Trends Live. Yes, hello everyone, this is Digital Trends Live, and I'm Greg Nibbler, and thank you very much for being here with us, wherever you are. We appreciate it. We broadcast live here every single weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, bringing you trending tech headlines, news, interviews, discussions, and more. We're broadcasting live on a number of platforms, so join in the conversations that we could have. Let us know what you think about the topics we bring up. And speaking of topics, let's start off with some headline news and catch you up to date on that. So the first thing we're going to bring up here has to do with Twitter. As we know, Twitter, Facebook, all kinds of different social media platforms are right now trying to figure out how to handle misinformation and other issues that pop up on there, and that certainly includes the President of the United States. And one of the things that is being talked about right now is the fact that Twitter is not actually issuing a notification on one of the tweets the president put out. So, of course, they did already in association with a couple of different things. They put misinformation tags on there. But with this one, it was something that Trump posted about talking about mail-in voting. And you can certainly look that up and you can see what it was that he posted on there. But what essentially it is that Twitter didn't act. That's kind of the big story right there, is that they said that this didn't violate their information. We actually spoke to them, and we got the news from them. So they said the tweets did not violate its civic integrity policy. This is coming from Twitter, which states that tweets containing broad, non-specific statements about the integrity of elections or civic processes, such as unsubstantiated claims that an election is rigged, would not be moderated. So they're saying that this won't be moderated, and that's one of the things that we're seeing here. And it's interesting that there was no action, and that's part of what we're taking a look at when it comes down to that. And as we get closer and closer to the election, we'll certainly see a lot of different things with Twitter, Facebook, other social media platforms debating how to handle those things. But that's Twitter with a non-action. Continuing on here with our trending news, as we bounce through a number of different topics, let's keep you up to date. Square is now in the crosshairs. Now, this is also another company owned by Jack Dorsey, who owns Twitter, also owns Square. Square in the crosshairs of a number of people right now for one of the practices they have of withholding money from small businesses. So there's a number of companies who have reported, this is coming from a New York Times report actually, a number of companies that have reported that Square is keeping up to 20 to 30% of their funds that they have been paid by their customers. Now, Square has responded to that in saying that this is part of a normal practice that they have. And they said that it's to protect against risky transactions or customers who demanded their money back. And they're doing this, they said that it's only 0.3%, but it sounds like, according to this report, there are thousands of small businesses that are reporting this as an issue, and they're claiming that during a pandemic, especially, let alone being a small business, that they need their funds, and this holding it up is really having a detriment to their businesses. So Square is saying that, and they announced this today, they rolled out a big press release talking about why they're doing this, how they're trying to help things out, and keep these reserves in there just in case there are issues when it comes to either a business or with their customers. And they said that they're doing it to help everybody out. But nonetheless, companies are not happy about this. And so it's something that we're going to be probably seeing a little bit more with this. Like I said, Square put out their press release today, but that's where we're at with it. So they provided the merchants with a notice on why they're doing it and how they're doing it and getting a little more clarification. People still aren't happy. So you can read more about that at digitaltrends.com, particularly if you're a small business and you're concerned about what the responses are. We've got some more details right there. Continuing on with trending news, yesterday was a big day with Apple with WWDC, the Worldwide Developers Conference, and the big keynote speech. Now, the conference is continuing on all this week for developers. They have their sessions that are going on and all kinds of different educational things. But this is the big public-facing thing that happened yesterday. And there's a lot that went down with it. We have it all broken down at digitaltrends.com. A couple of big things. MacOS, they announced the name of the new platform. It's going to be Big Sur, continuing on there with their parks and mountain names. They're going to be adding in ARM chips. So they did officially say they're going to be moving away from Intel processors, and that's a big move right there. So gradually they're going to phase them out, starting with later this year with some particular Mac laptops, and going from there, it's going to be going on to all of their different products. So that's a big move right there. We also had some iOS updates. iOS 14, which is going to be rolling out probably in September, we anticipate. That's usually about when it rolls out. And there's a lot of things that happen with that. We're going to have Andy Boxall joining us here shortly on the show, so he'll kind of go into some more details on what exactly is going to be going on. So how the changes are. Definitely kind of more Android-like, I've got to say. A lot of what these apps are, a lot of things that they're doing there sound very Android-like, but there are features that I guess a lot of iPhone users have been wanting for a long time, like widgets and the ability to make folders and kind of customize what your desktop looks like a little bit more. So those features finally coming out there. We also had some things with the Apple Watch, and this is pretty interesting what the Apple Watch is going to be doing, and certainly a sign of the times. They're increasing a lot of the different abilities for it when it comes to the health side of things. But one of them that they're going to be doing is adding in a they got the sleep timer, or sleep tracker right there, but also a hand washing timer is something that is going to be put into place on there. As you can see right there, there's some different faces that you can use. You can customize those. But the hand washing app, being the sign of the times, it will now be able to detect when you start washing your hands, and it'll start a timer for 20 seconds to make sure that you get that full amount of time to get rid of any bacteria or viruses that are on there. So that's something we're going to be getting, we've already been getting used to, but now it's getting into our tech as well. So a 20-second timer that will let you know how long. There's so many different things with this WWDC announcement and different ways that it's going to change what you do. We've got all the details of Digital Trends. Like I said, we'll talk about iOS here, though, in just a few minutes with Andy Boxall. Continuing on with trending news, and there's always a lot happening when it comes to tech. Let's talk about gaming. So Microsoft with Mixer had been a very big challenger, or wanted to be a very big challenger, to Twitch and YouTube gaming, and by hiring away some pretty notable people like Ninja and Shroud. Well, now Microsoft has called it quits. They are actually moving Mixer to Facebook, and this is part of the announcement yesterday. So starting on July 22nd, it's going to start transitioning its services, content producers and users, to Facebook gaming. This is a big move because it's Microsoft saying they can't compete, essentially, and Facebook is now snapping that up. That's going to be, going against, like I said, Twitch, YouTube. Facebook also with this has announced that they're going to be partnering with some more things with the Project X Cloud game streaming service. So we don't know exactly how that partnership's going to go down, but they're going to be doing some more Microsoft partnerships. They started buying up some more game developers as well. So we may see some exclusive things come to Facebook gaming as it makes its big push to battle in that entire market, which, as we all know, is a huge, huge market. But Microsoft giving it up, going to Facebook gaming, and saying that they're going to be sharing Mixer with them. So interesting how that's going to all play out. There's a lot to talk about with that. Check that out, digitaltrends.com. Final trending story here to get to. I know I'm going through a lot, but we've got this. Facebook also launching a prediction app today. I'll just briefly tell you about that, and then we got to get to our product of the day. But Facebook is created an app called Forecast, which is going to allow people to make guesses about what they think is going to happen. Kind of an interesting standing right there. They'll guess what happens, and then people can vote on it. And they're going to start with COVID-19 and have health and researchers make predictions about it, and then they're just going to put out what those predictions are. Kind of a weird thing. It doesn't seem really science-based, but nonetheless, that is something that Facebook's launching. You can read more about that as well right there at digitaltrends.com.
Hey, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. It's now time for the product of the day.
Here it is. Your product of the day today is a robotic lawnmower. Yes, it's the RoboMow, RC308 robotic lawnmower. It can mow up to a quarter acre. If you maybe are forgetting to mow your lawn, this is a good way to handle it. It'll work pretty much whenever you want it to. You can set it up for 24 hours a day. It'll come back and recharge itself when the battery is low. It cuts your lawn in little sections as it goes through, then eventually covering the whole thing. You set up a wire around your property, almost like for like one of the dog collars, and then it'll make sure that your RoboMow stays on the property. It needs no gas, it has zero emissions, there's no exhaust. It just goes out and it mows your lawn in different zones, and again goes back and charges itself. So really, in theory, you never have to do anything. It just kind of handles it all yourself. It's even got a rain sensor that allows you to choose whether or not you want it to mow in the rain. Wet grass is gross, so that is something else you can set up with it. So it's a lot of customization that you can do with there. And again, to take care of that deal, it is right there. And there's a link right below me, or whatever platform you're watching me on. Click that link, follow through, take advantage of the deal today. And this deal is coming from Lowe's. It is $1,039 right now, but thinking about not having to mow the lawn. That's kind of a good feeling. All right, anyway, there you go. That is our product of the day. Need to get to a break because continuing on here, it's an action-packed show that we have here with Digital Trends Live, as it always is. And I'm very excited about our next interview. We have Tom Jennings from Frontline to talk about their documentary, Opioids, Inc. It's premiering today, and there is a lot to discuss with that. So let's get to a break. We'll be right back after this with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler, and thank you very much for joining us. There's a new documentary premiering in a collaboration between Frontline and the Financial Times. It's called Opioids, Inc. It's available on demand and on PBS today. And the documentary reveals how one drug company bribed doctors, committed insurance fraud, and more in order to increase profits for a highly addictive painkiller. And we have the producer of that documentary joining us right now. We've got Tom Jennings. Tom, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hey, thanks. Great to be here.
Even what I just said right there, giving that brief description of it, it sounds like something that's written for a Hollywood movie. I mean, it just sounds so corrupt. And this story really is just fascinating how it unfolded. I'm curious for you, how did you first come across this?
Well, I have to give credit to a colleague of mine, a guy named Nick Verbitsky, who's been on this story for 2 years. But this is a story that started into reality really back in 2013 when federal prosecutors started getting wind of illegal activity at Insys Therapeutics, and whistleblowers were coming out of the woodwork after about I think it was about 5 months after the company had gone public. Had a meteoric success on Wall Street, was doing very well with sales of this drug, this opioid drug, fentanyl-based sublingual under the tongue spray, painkiller, one of the most powerful painkillers known.
And like you said, the profits were going really well, doing really well on Wall Street, and there was a lot of corruption going on, and clearly that's what you outlined in this documentary. But can you give us just a little, a brief idea for everybody out there of what kinds of things they were doing?
Yeah, they had a business model that was premised on the idea of getting doctors to prescribe this drug. Now, that's not unusual in the pharmaceutical world. A lot of doctors are contracted and actually given a fee to speak on behalf of a drug they might like to prescribe. There's an efficacy issue that they want to get the drug out there, and it's an educational idea. What INSIS did was contort that very legal idea and pay the doctors, never say that they had to present in front of any kind of doctor other than themselves. And then they demanded that they actually prescribe this drug, and they tracked their prescription patterns. Not only did they demand that they prescribe the drug, but they demanded that once they prescribed the drug, that they increase the dosages of this drug. Again, a fentanyl-based drug, one of the most highly addictive drugs known to man.
When you were making this, I can only imagine, what it's like going up against giant pharmaceutical companies, Wall Street, very powerful people, very rich people. What was some of the resistance that you had to get over, or maybe some of the big hurdles that you had in making this?
There are a lot of hurdles. Access is the blood life of a documentary, of any kind of journalistic inquiry. Doors were shut all the way around. We were lucky to get access to the senior vice president of sales, this guy who kind of held the key. He was there, he was a witness, he saw everything. And then once we got him, we started to dig harder and get other people who were involved in this whole ruse as well. People who were knowingly in the ruse and people who were not, who didn't know what they were doing, but in retrospect did, and were implicated, were questioned by federal prosecutors as well. So it was the access that was the hardest part, but once we started penetrating it, we got what we needed.
What was one of the things for you, seeing this whole picture and creating this, what was one of the most surprising moments for you while making this?
Well, I do hope your viewers can watch the film, because there are a couple interviews that I've done a lot of interviews in my life as a documentary filmmaker, and I would say that two of the interviews that I did for this film stand out in my career as containing moments that were just kind of gobsmacking, unbelievable moments. Things that the person was saying, relating things that they did that I couldn't quite believe that they were talking about. One was the senior VP of sales for INSIS Therapeutics, this guy named Alec Berlikoff, who forthrightly said that he went out to bribe doctors. He used the word bribery without any hesitation. I remember going into that interview thinking, almost wanting to hesitantly say, did you bribe doctors? He owned it completely. The other one was a doctor, actually a nurse practitioner who had prescribing privileges, who was willing to talk about how she prescribed fentanyl illegally to individuals in exchange for these bribes, and how she didn't really have any moral quandary about it. And those two interviews really spoke to me while I was doing them as people who are going way past lines that we just assume in America are ethically, driven into our souls, and they just didn't have that kind of boundary. I was astounded.
And that, like I said at the beginning, it seems like it's something written, for a movie where it's just like, oh, there's no way it's that bad.
Yeah.
But I mean, it sounds like it really is that bad. And what I'm going to remind everybody too where to watch this, because I highly suggest everybody does. But in doing this, do you think that this is something that is also endemic within that entire industry, to where there's other companies that are doing this, just haven't been revealed yet?
Well, we do know that there were other companies doing it based on the track record, based on what INSIS Therapeutics did. They based a lot of their behavior on other company practices. However, most companies do adhere to, norms and legalities and ethical parameters. These guys just were not necessarily willing to oblige to that. But there are other companies, and the renowned, the kind of the common household names that we now bandy about with regard to the opioid epidemic. People like the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma, and big giants like Johnson & Johnson that just got sued, last year in federal court. These are real players. Things are really happening. These are patterns of behavior that have been expressed before.
Well, it's something that I think everybody should watch. And again, I want to remind everybody. So it's Opioids Inc. and it's on Frontline. Partnership with Frontline, the Financial Times. It's on YouTube, the PBS video app, and it's going to premiere on PBS stations starting today. So you can find out if you want to watch on PBS in your local area. And Tom, thank you so much for being here with us. I think this is just such an incredible documentary that you've created, and very important, to realize this is real. This is what's happening out there, and to understand how that all goes down. And thank you very much for being here with us on Digital Trends Live.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
All right, Tom, right there. So Opioids Inc. Yeah, shocking how common that is. Like I said, it seems like it's something that's fake, but it is not. It is real. And I highly suggest everybody take a look at that and watch this documentary. All right, continuing on here with Digital Trends Live, we've got more coming up. We've got our own Andy Boxall who's going to be joining us to talk about WWDC, because there's a lot of iOS updates, so we'll have that coming up. And also, we've got a little bit of news. He's got some breaking news about a OnePlus phone, so we're going to talk about that too. So stick around. Back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. This is Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thanks for joining. Hit subscribe, share the show, let other people know about it. We're here every single weekday, keeping you up to date with what's going on in technology. And we got a couple of big topics to cover right now, but that is why we're bringing in Mr. Andy Boxall to talk about this. We've got the WWDC event, the big keynote happening yesterday, a whole bunch of announcements, but in particular, some big ones for iOS 14. Andy, hello. What were some of the big takeaways for you?
So, Apple really made a very interesting point right from the start. They said, what we've done is rethought iconic elements of iOS. And that's a pretty bold statement for Apple in terms of iPhone software. And for once, it wasn't wrong. There is going to be a big visual change to iOS, so the software that's on your iPhone, at the end of this year. There's two aspects that are really going to change. The first is widgets. Widgets have worked on iOS for a bit, but they've all been sort of hidden away. Now, Apple has engineered it so that you can put widgets on your home screen. So instead of just the rows of app icons we're so used to, we're going to be able to put widgets in the middle and all around the edges, and all of the little icons will sort of mold around these widgets. Even more impressively is you're going to be able to stack them on top of each other. So if you want 10 different widgets but not have all of your space taken up on the screen, you can stack them up and swipe through them. A really big change to the way that iOS looks. And then we have something called the app library. And that is going to take all of those multiple home screens filled with app icons that none of us ever use, and then put them onto what I want to call an app drawer on Android. So essentially they're going to be hidden away, and you're going to swipe up or in this new screen filled with all of those icons that you never ever used before. So that's going to simplify the look of iOS. And the widgets are going to change the way our home screens look from a very uniform style to something much more individual. So for me, those are huge changes in the way that we're used to seeing iOS.
Isn't that more just like what Android's already doing?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And I mean, Apple and Google have sort of traded a bit over the past years of sort of one introducing one thing that the other one does and vice versa. But this is, I think, probably the most significant adoption of Android style visual and UI elements that Apple has ever made. So we're definitely going to see all of those tweets and messages saying, oh, I've done this on my Android phone for years and years. That, and to be honest, it is quite justified. But Apple has thought it out and they've put it into iOS in a sensible, still very Apple way. So I'm looking forward to trying it out very much.
That's it. Like you said, there's probably going to be a lot of Twitter comments about this from Android users now going back to Apple users and vice versa. So that's just part of the changes, and I know there's a lot more that's out too with that. And we've got all of that at Digital Trends, that people can take a look at when it comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many things.
I really want to highlight. Go on, Greg.
Ooh.
Well, the other thing I wanted to highlight was something called app clips. And app clips are mini, tiny versions of apps that are going to work on your phone and be shared through really interesting ways. For example, it might come in a message that says, well, you want to go to this cafe, and they've got their own app. So you'll open a mini app called an app clip on your phone to pay in the store or guide you there or whatever. And we see this on Android already called Instant Apps. Where app clips is really exciting is that Apple wants to introduce physical QR codes or NFC scans in stores where you'll just be able to tap your iPhone and suddenly get up this mini app. And these are tiny 10 megabyte files instead of downloading an entire app. And this really could change the way that we use apps in stores and in venues all around the world because it's accessible, which is something that Instant Apps on Android isn't. So another really exciting part for iOS 14.
Interesting. Yeah, there's, and that's just one more thing of so many different things that are coming out from WWDC. But I know going from that, again, everybody can go to digitaltrends.com and follow up with everything that you're bringing up there. Let's talk about this other story that's just kind of happening today, this morning, and you had brought this up to me off air, and I don't even know all the details about it. Tell us about what OnePlus is doing.
Yes, this is really exciting. OnePlus announced today that it is going to launch a new, reasonably priced smartphone range. Now, OnePlus was born making reasonably priced phones with the OnePlus One back in 2014. It cost $350 at the time, which was half the price of sort of big flagships at that point. Since then, OnePlus has made increasingly more expensive smartphones with the OnePlus 8 Pro at the moment almost reaching $1,000. So it's a very different situation. They've been asked about making something more affordable, and rumors gathered about something called the OnePlus Z or OnePlus Nord. And now it looks like it's actually going to happen. We're going to get a new, reasonably priced smartphone from OnePlus. And that's a big deal. It's a big deal because with the OnePlus One in 2014, OnePlus changed the way that we thought about not just reasonably priced phones, but flagship phones, and even how we purchased those devices. So what it did in 2014, it looks like it might be trying to do again in 2020, just as we're sort of getting into great reasonably priced phones like the Google Pixel 3a or the iPhone SE 2020. So it's a fantastic time for OnePlus to be considering this. And it's a really exciting return for a company that built its name doing exactly this. And I can't wait to see what they're going to bring out. We don't know when it's going to happen. Rumors point to July being a a OnePlus Z or OnePlus Nord release. The only bad part is they've said this isn't destined for the US. It's going to be European and India. But then they sort of pulled it back and said, we're going to have an affordable phone for the US in the near future. So whatever they launch next won't be for the US, but then next, that should be. So even though this isn't going to be for the US, good things are coming in the affordable OnePlus range. Really exciting stuff.
With OnePlus now, I mean, you mentioned Google with their 3A and, the impending 4A whenever that happens, and then Apple with their mid-range phone. And do you see other manufacturers going into this? Are we going to start to get more of these mid-range phones?
I would hope so. The thing is that outside of the US, mid-range, mid-priced smartphones are actually fairly common. You've got big name manufacturers, Oppo, Realme, Xiaomi, and the Xiaomi spin-off brands like Redmi, all making very, very capable smartphones that don't cost much money. It's just they tend not to be directly available in the US. The Google Pixel 3a and the iPhone SE, well, they sort of own the market pretty much. You have some Motorola's and some Nokia's in there, but nothing really grabs you like the Google or the Pixel. And this is where OnePlus could really succeed because they've got that brand name that's got a massive following and a very dedicated following. So I'd love to see other manufacturers outside of the US come into the US and bring those same kind of devices.
I would love to see that. Some more competition is always better, and I'm more of a mid-range phone guy anyway, so maybe that's just me. But I want to see some more competition in that. Well, Andy, thank you very much, for being here. As always, keeping us up to date with everything, and we've got all of your articles and details there at digitaltrends.com/mobile. Check out all of Andy's write-ups, and Andy, thank you so much.
Pleasure, no problem at all. Thanks, Greg.
All right, we've got more coming up here on Digital Trends Live. So just to let you know, you are watching live. We are live. We're live here every single weekday, so thank you, everybody. We've got Winnie Sun coming up next for some more financial advice. After that, we've got Sigils for Who's Got Game, so much more. Drop in your comments, your questions. We'll be right back after this with more Digital Trends Live. This is Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler, and thank you very much for joining us wherever you are. We like to keep you up to date on everything that is going on in the world of tech and beyond, and certainly finances are something that, well, we always care about, but in particular right now, there's so many questions. It's so crazy out there, and that is why we have Winnie Sun, who joins us every week to help break this down and help have it make sense for us a little bit more. And Winnie, as always, thank you for being here. And I got to ask, what is one of the big things that people are asking this week?
This week, Greg, people are saying, what do I do about my money? There's so much uncertainty. And so we have seen actually record levels of cash at the banks as well as the money market. It's so interesting. All these years we were talking about saving for your emergency fund, saving for that just in case. And now Americans are doing that in droves. So obviously a lot of people are still suffering, but believe it or not, record levels of cash right now.
So with that cash, and if people are able to save right now, I guess, what is the right way to do that? As people are realizing, like we've talked in the last couple of weeks, where having this kind of backup, plan is really important. How do you actually accurately plan that out?
Absolutely. So that's a question that's come up a lot, is like, should I just continue to keep the money in the bank somewhere safe, maybe earning no interest or very little interest, or even like position that into certificates of deposits or CDs that are FDIC insured, or should I do something else with it? And I think it really depends on your individual situation. But the main thing is, it's not a bad thing to hold some cash, especially right now. We are definitely doing that with our clients. We're holding higher levels of cash than normal. And that also gives us buying opportunities when opportunities arise, but it also makes sure that you have an emergency fund. So for most of us who are watching this, the rule of thumb is you want at least 6 months of living expenses in an emergency fund. That doesn't mean it has to sit in cash. You could have a portion of it invested, or you can even put it into a Roth IRA, which is what I think most people should do. If you qualify, put it into an IRA, a Roth IRA, because a Roth IRA gives you that benefit of long term financial growth if you invest in a nicely diversified portfolio. But in case of an emergency, you can tap it without penalties on the contribution that you put into the Roth IRA. So kind of serve as a dual purpose. So right now, be really smart about thinking about how you're handling your money. So sure, interest rates are really low, but it doesn't mean that your money needs to just sit there and not earn interest as well.
Interesting. That's great advice. Going from that, I know some other things too that that people are concerned about or have questions about is what's happening with the IRS and some of the new things that they've released regarding financial statements. Can you walk us through what this all means?
Absolutely. So, with the IRS just released new news on Friday, and this is big. So, those of you who own IRAs or 401ks, you might find your situation, if you're in the first camp and you have monies in the bank, that's great. But if you're in the second camp, which is over 45 million Americans have filed for unemployment, and so that number doesn't even reflect the entire population of Americans who are out of work, or could be partially out of work. So a lot of people are saying, well, what if I need to use my assets? The IRS does allow you right now to take from your 401k or your IRA up to $100,000, and you're able to pay that back within 3 years and not accrue taxes. Now, typically, if you're under the age of 59 and a half and you take monies from your 401k or your IRA, you'll be subject to a 10% IRS penalty on the monies that you take out before 59 and a half. But because of the pandemic, the IRS is now allowing you to take up to 100,000, and if you don't pay it back, you'll be subject to taxes, but no 10% penalty. But if you do pay it back within the 3 years, no penalties, no taxes. Now, I don't want you to go out and take money from your 401k or your IRA. This should definitely be sort of a last resort item. You should definitely look at other ways to be able to get your household monies and income to be able to support yourself, and make that sort of your last really decision, because that money is taking from your future retirement. So I'd rather you struggle a little bit when you're younger than come 60, 70, 80 years old and have less of a retirement base later on.
Good to know. So 3 years to pay back, but yeah, prefer try not to do it unless you absolutely have to do it.
Absolutely.
Basically, when it comes down to it.
Yes.
Going from that, any other thing from the announcement from the IRS that you think people should really know about?
Well, I'm gonna segue a little bit over to unemployment, because I think this is something that a lot of us have confusion on. So those of you who perhaps have been on unemployment or currently on unemployment, and then you've been offered by your employer to go back to work, you might be concerned of, well, what if I go back to work? I've been receiving unemployment from the state and possibly that extra $600 from the federal government. People are saying, well, I'm making more on unemployment than going back to work, but if I don't go back to work, they might report me. So what do I do? So in that situation, you might consider, if you do go back to work, you do always have the option to then either remaining on unemployment or going back on unemployment. And what I mean by that is, if you go back to work on a part-time basis, then you could continue to collect some unemployment. Now, if you go back to work on a full-time basis, then your unemployment will cease to exist. Now, if you're in a situation where you go back to work, either part-time or full-time, but then for whatever reasons you then need to go back on unemployment, that's still an option. So you can continue to collect unemployment if your employment ceases to exist. But do remember that if you are part-time employed, you could partially still collect unemployment. And that federal relief, that extra $600, technically expires on July 31st, or at the end of July. So unless the federal government comes back with another stimulus package that will benefit you on the unemployment side, which we will say that half the government right now says they will not pass this. Um, do know that those are the options. I think there's a lot of confusion on the unemployment front, so I definitely want to reach out, talk about that. That there's been a lot of talk about that in the news the last few days.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who are confused on that too. That exactly those questions on what's going on. So it's good to know a little bit more information on that. And there's still obviously some uncertainty, but like you said, half of the government's still saying they're not going to pass anything else. And it's a lot to figure out and a lot to understand, and that's why it's always so nice having you here to talk about all of this.
Oh.
Before I know, thank you for your time. But is there anything else you want to let people know about for this week of concerns?
Yeah, let's talk about real quick, and I'll let you. But one really big topic is unemployment. A lot of people are finding themselves being laid off, and so a lot of people are very stressed out because we've had people at like companies like Boeing and BP and AT&T and 24 Hour Fitness. They're laying off employees left and right, and a lot of these employees have been reaching out to myself included, and they're saying, I've been at a company now 15 years. I never expected to be laid off. So many people are going through this transition for the very first time, and they don't know where to start. So I wanted to give you sort of 4 quick tidbits. Okay, the first thing you want to do
Great.
is obviously to reach out to a financial advisor. It could be like myself, someone who's accustomed to working with lots of company layoffs and transitions. That's key. The second thing you want to do is to collect all your contacts at the company, whether it be HR and benefits, healthcare, all that information, because once you leave your company and you no longer have access to the internet, it's going to be harder to collect that information. Now, the third thing is, people always think the third thing should be filed for unemployment. It's actually not. The third thing is to jump on LinkedIn, refresh your profile real quick, nice photo, and collect those references from all your colleagues and people that you work with as soon as possible. And then the fourth thing then will be to file unemployment. And really at that point, that's when we get really busy with our clients and go through that process of collecting data and figuring out how you're going to make ends meet for the next few months and beyond.
Wow, that's a lot to think about. I would not have put it in that order, so clearly that is just one more reason why you're great at what you do. Winnie, thank you so much, for being here every week to help us make sense a little bit more of this. And I know everybody can go to you, like you said, and find more help. And I highly encourage that to go check out everything that Winnie is doing and all of your broadcasts too that you do as well. I mean, just it's all great stuff. And thank you as always for being here with us.
No, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Digital Trends. I feel very, very grateful for this opportunity to share.
Thank you. Winnie's son right there. Seriously, she really does help out. Makes sense of all of this crazy stuff that is going on. And so highly suggest everybody checking out everything that she does. Continuing on here, I know we've got to keep on going with Digital Trends Live, and I thank everybody for joining us. Up next for our Who's Got Game segment with full screen, we've got Sigils. We're going to be talking about YouTube. We're going to talk about his career, talking about some of the interesting things that are going on there. All of that's coming up next. Stick around, back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Digital Trends Live, and once again, it is time for Who's Got Game, where we partner with Full Screen and get to talk to incredibly talented people like our next guest. You probably know him from YouTube. He is Sigils, aka Andrew, who's joining us right now to talk about so many different things that I want to get into. First off, though, thank you for being here with us today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You know, something I'm always interested to learn about is, obviously, you know, you have all this success. We're going to talk about the things that you're doing now and all these different partnerships you have. But going back to the beginning, I'm always want to know, you know, for somebody like you, how is it you got your start in this? And where was that moment where you're like, okay, I can do this as a career?
Man, my first YouTube video started when I think the biggest channel on YouTube had like 3 million subscribers. Like, people weren't making a living doing this. That wasn't even like making money. Like, it was just sort of something people did, like early days of YouTube. And for me, the thing that was exciting is that there wasn't a lot of like red tape. I'd always been afraid of like, I wanted to get into film and stuff like that, but there's so many people you had to convince, you know, producers and writers and all these things. And the fact that you could like have an idea that you thought was funny, make it and post it, and people could watch it immediately was like very exciting to me. So I started doing it for fun. And then as it started to emerge as a career, it was already like something I was in love with. So I just decided to pursue more. And then just kind of like doing it as a side gig for years and years. I'm on my like 8th or 9th year right now. At some point, it sort of just like reached a point where I was like, all right, I think I could take the plunge and go for it. And I think I've been doing it for about full time for about 3 years now.
Wow, that's great. Was there any one particular video that just like put it over the edge?
Not really. For me, like my particular career has been like sort of like a steady, like there have been periods of nothing. Like, you know, you have to work hard through those moments of like no growth. Like what you're doing isn't working. You have to kind of find your routine and your rhythm that people like. And then for me, it's been like just kind of like a steady thing. I haven't had like explosive growth, just every day the same amount, but you keep putting in the work and it starts to add up.
Well, and you've gone from one channel and then you've launched another one, so you gave yourself even more work. But at the same time, like doing that, you know, what made you want to do that? And for a lot of other people out there too, who maybe have a YouTube channel or maybe are trying to get into this, you know, where do you make that decision to be like, okay, I'm going to do this all over again on another channel?
That's a great question. I'm still deciding if I've made the right decisions on that myself. Some of it is like playing into the algorithm of YouTube, right? If you build a channel that is doing well around a certain type of content, introducing something that's completely different can affect how your channel gets recommended against other channels. It can affect your growth and things like that. So I've seen a lot of other creators have success where they have a channel that's popular and then they say, hey, if you guys enjoy like what I do, but you want something a little bit different, I'm going to do an experiment over here. And that's sort of what I'm trying as well. Is, you know, I have the one channel that's doing well, it's thriving, but I wanted to try doing different types of content. Yes, it's still games, but it's different types of games. It's different types of content, like, and structure inside of it. And so I made a new channel. It's sort of like my playground, right? Because at this point, the main channel is my baby. I focus on it. I have a certain rhythm and thing that I expect to do. And the second channel is sort of where I'm trying new things, that I'm experimenting, maybe trying to find the next wave of content or the next kind of like style that works well. Who knows? Maybe it'll surpass the original channel.
I feel like that's kind of like a comedian going to an open mic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like low risk, high reward kind of does this work? Do you guys like this? But if they're wrong, it doesn't affect, like what I'm already doing.
Being on YouTube for this amount of time and obviously the success on there, I want to get your thoughts on TikTok, the rise of TikTok, and just what a force it's become. Especially over this last year, but the last couple of years really, and TikTok gaming and all these other platforms bringing gaming in. Like, how do you feel specifically about that one?
TikTok is crazy. I have done a little bit of stuff with TikTok. I've actually just started experimenting with it more, but I have never seen a platform push content so hard. You can just have no followers, and if you upload something that's funny, somehow people find it and it gets watched. And the thing that I've seen with my friends, the group of people that I do stuff with on YouTube, we've all started posting some gaming TikToks. And what we've seen is, more than anything else, TikTok seems to be this place where people are really hungry to learn about content. So, you can post a 30-second gaming clip or something like that. And if people are engaged by it, they'll come check out your YouTube channel. Like, people who use TikTok don't just use TikTok. It's their short form appetizer type content. But if they see something where oh, wow, I think that might be engaging in a longer form, they convert much better than other platforms. If you have a lot of followers on Instagram and you say, come follow me on Twitter, they're like, no, I don't really want to do that. But on TikTok, if you say, hey, if you like what you see, come on over to my YouTube channel, more than any other platform, we're seeing that they're really excited to do so.
Wow. That's kind of interesting. I wonder what it is just about that platform that makes that so much easier. But I mean, I guess that's great.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Going from there, talking about TikTok, let's talk about some of the other things you do. And I wanted to bring this up too because you're on Players Network. And this is an interesting concept of combining so many different people. Can you give everybody who doesn't know just a quick description of what all this is that you're doing?
Sure. Okay. So Players Network is a show. It's a live stream show. They're also working on doing some video content and stuff essentially, but it's still newer. But basically it combines people from different career paths into playing games together. So we've got athletes from the NBA and the NFL and more. We've got musicians and DJs, and we've got streamers and gamers and people like that. And basically we all come together and play games together. And a big part of the premise is that everybody loves games, right? Even people you wouldn't think, Jarvis Landry and I will play Call of Duty together. And that's weird, right? Because we come from, he's the super famous NFL player, and I'm a guy who yells at a screen for a living, but we can come together in this common interest and play together, and it's a ton of fun. He's a hilarious guy, by the way. But that's sort of the concept, and they rotate us through, so we're always playing with different members of the group. There's about 16 or 17 of us, and it's been a fascinating and hilarious time.
That's Jarvis Landry. That'd be just hilarious. Yeah, seeing him do this. But I mean, when you look at that, combining all of these different people, I guess, and you've been in this for so long, I'm curious if there's somebody that you specifically would like to game with that's outside of the gaming realm, like somebody like a Jarvis Landry. Is there anybody out there that you would really like to play with?
I think it'd be fun to play with Keanu Reeves. Just in general,
what game?
Neo himself. I think it'd be funny. Do you remember that old Matrix game they made for the GameCube? He's not even in it at all, but I think it'd be really funny to play the Matrix game with Neo. But I don't know, even just Call of Duty or something like that. A lot of people, they don't get into the fringe gaming. Call of Duty is a very common game. It's fun to play games that people are comfortable with, so they don't spend the whole time trying to figure it out. But gaming sort of opens up a way to talk to people differently because you're both engaging in a similar activity. It's like getting a coffee almost, We both like this, we're doing it, so hey, how's your day? Maybe it's the new golf. I don't know.
Right. I love that idea of playing a movie game with somebody who was in the movie just to get their reaction from it.
Yeah, no, I was at the E3 thing where they brought Keanu out to reveal that he was going to be in the Cyberpunk game. And that was so cool. Just the genuine enthusiasm he had for it and the crowd. I think that kind of stuff is neat, seeing different worlds collide in gaming.
Something that's in the news right now, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I just wanted to see if you had any opinions on it. Obviously with Mixer now combining into Facebook gaming and just kind of saying that's it, we're going this route. Do you have any initial thoughts on that move from Mixer?
Yesterday was wild. Yeah, you wake up in a social media platform's we're done. See you guys. I think in some ways it might make a lot of sense. I actually did some work with Facebook gaming at one point. I'm a Twitch partner now, but I actually know a lot of the people on the Facebook gaming team, and I think they're exceptional people who are really committed towards building a good gaming platform. And so I think, if Microsoft wasn't happy with like how Mixer was performing and what they're doing, that there's a lot of good room for those two to work together. And I think that they could cook up some really good stuff. So I'm curious. I think competition's a good thing, and seeing two juggernaut companies combine to work on a product together is really interesting. I want to see more, but I'm intrigued. I feel for the Mixer partners. I know that's got to be really rough news to wake up to, but hopefully, I know Facebook's doing everything they can to make them land on their feet. So hopefully, everybody ends up okay.
Great. Well, Sigils, for you, what's next on the horizon? What do you have in the pipeline? What can people expect from you? Anything that you want to promote in particular?
Man, well, as you mentioned, I did just start a new channel. So I have a main channel. We do like a lot of like Fortnite and Minecraft kind of stuff. But I've started a second channel now, which is focused on Call of Duty Warzone and things like that, stuff taken from my stream. So I'm really really focusing like on my stream and building up that second channel. So that one's called Sigils TV. You guys can check it out on YouTube, or you can check me on Twitch, where I'm streaming a lot of Warzone and working on like filming videos live. Which, if you're ever curious about like the behind the scenes of how that looks, that might be a good way to check it out.
Nice. Well, hey, I want to say thank you so much for joining us here today, too, just to talk about this. This is a great conversation. Really interesting getting your thoughts on all of it. And congratulations on all your success with all of this.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you very much. Love being on the show.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So Sigils right here on Digital Trends Live. He's awesome. So check out everything that he's doing there. Really interesting stuff. And somebody who's, like you said, he grinded at it and he found success at it. So that's really inspiring. Continuing on here. Well, actually, we're wrapping up the show. Look at that. See, it flies by here on Digital Trends Live. We've already been here for an hour, and that's just one day. Every single day, we've got more things going on here on this show. And so I thank everybody for joining us and for being a part of this. Let's give you just a little bit of what's coming up tomorrow. I want to make sure you're up to date. We've got Caleb Dennison making his return to Digital Trends Live. So Caleb will be here talking about televisions. And we've got a big week of guests coming up. I'm just going to say this. You will not want to miss an episode of Digital Trends Live this week. Huge guests, household names. So hit subscribe, whatever platform you're on. Hit that subscribe button. That way you get notifications when we go live. You can join in and you can stay up to date with everything. And if you want to learn more about anything that we talked about today, go to digitaltrends.com. Follow up on all of those topics right there, and that's where you can stay up to date all day long. And thanks for tuning in. I'm Greg Nibbler. I'll be right back here tomorrow with another edition of Digital Trends Live.